Ahead of tomorrow's convention of the ruling party, the APC, President Muhammadu Buhari's men appear to have stamped the authority of the incoming National Working Committee of the All Progressive Congress. Buhari has apparently appropriated some of the key offices ahead of the party's national convention coming up tomorrow, Saturday, March 26, in Abuja. In a similar vein, it was gathered that the Congress for Progressive Change CPC elements in the APC had adopted Senator Tokunbo Afikuyomi as their nominee for the office of the National Vice Chairman Southwest. With this, the CPC leg of the APC merger, Buhari's original group seemed to be establishing a foothold in the Southwest and other zones in the South. The president had long hinted at the possibility of consensus when some time back, he told his party members that the APC had always embraced the consensus approach since inception, citing the emergence of Chief Bisi Akande, Chief John Odigo Yegun, and Adam Oshiomhole as examples to buttress his point. More so, Nasarawa State Governor and Chairman of the Media Committee of the National Planning Convention, Abdullahi Sule, assured that the consensus arrangement that will be adopted tomorrow in choosing candidates for the party offices conform to the 2022 Electoral Act. Meanwhile, Ekiti State Governor Kayode Fayemi says he's not aware of any consensus agreement reached by governors with President Muhammadu Buhari on candidates for the national chairmanship and other positions in Saturday's National Convention of the All Progressive Congress. Governor Fayemi, at a high-level policy dialogue organized by the Center for Democracy and Development, CDD, in Abuja, said while it is within the rights of President Buhari to have preferred candidates, the president will have to campaign for such anointed candidates at the Eagle Square venue of the convention before they become acceptable to delegates. Buhari is said to have endorsed Senator Abdullahi Adamu for the APC national chairman, among other candidates. Fayemi is the chairman of the Nigerian Governors Forum.
The president is well within his right to have a preferred candidate, but in our party, let him come and campaign for that candidate at the Eagle Square on Saturday. If his candidate wins, fine. If his candidate loses, well, he's going to have to live with it.
A lot to chat about this morning, Tundu.
Yes, it appears that it's all going right down to the wire with regards to the emergence of a national chairman for the APC. In the past, like you just read, the APC has this time-honored tradition of having a consensus candidate emerge as chairman. But this time, there seems to be a lot of resistance. We've seen that before, obviously. Political, gladiators are hardly wallflowers. They will fight to the end. But I'm going to just go back to the era of Comrade Adams Oshiomhole and how he emerged. There were other people in the reckoning. I remember 2 former governors who withdrew close to the end of the race, saying that they are respecting the wishes of President Muhammadu Buhari. They came out and said that they're respecting, party unity. None of the candidates for chairmanship has come out to say that. President Muhammadu Buhari has his own clear, favorite candidate here. So nobody has come out to say just because the president wills it, we will withdraw. And this is what we're also hearing from Governor Fayemi, chairman of the Nigerian Governors Forum, no less, saying that the president will have to continue to campaign. So there is not going to be any kind of bending of the knee here. It looks like they're going to fight for this right to the end. And to bring it, like you also mentioned, in conformity with the Electoral Act, to compare that again, to draw a contrast with what happened in the Adams Oshiomhole era, when we had the candidates withdrawing from his race, it was just a simple voice vote because there was no opponent standing against him. Now you have to have a signature of everybody who was a candidate saying that they agree to this consensus. When people are clearly so entrenched in their position, that's going to be quite a hard feat to do. I guess 24 hours is a long time in politics, so we'll see what happens.
Dr. Butt?
Yes, you cannot be more correct, to use Professor Bola Akinterewa's favorite phrase. Now, before now, we had concluded that the APC has been able to settle its affairs. And going to the convention, the president, as the leader of the party, has been able to whip everybody into line. The president, according to a statement published by Garuba Shehu in the last 24 hours, the president, in the February 22 meeting that he had with some governors of the APC, in the March 13 letter that he wrote to the governor of the APC Governors Forum, has been trying to see that his party will be together and to prevent the party from making the same mistakes that the PDP made in 2015. And in the last meeting that he had this week with the party, he said, look, everyone within the party should realize that they should not allow the PDP to get his dirty hands onto the affairs of the Nigerian state again. And at that meeting, he appealed to the governors to agree to the consensus proposition, number one. And two, to ensure that there is unity within the party. Yesterday, we had on the program Governor Sani Bello of Niger State, who then said, yes, indeed, the president wants unity, he wants consensus, and the president had chosen Abdullahi Adamu, former governor of Niger State, who, in fact, originally wanted to be president, after President Obasanjo, that didn't work out, okay? Now, what we know as of this morning is that yesterday, on Thursday, the president of Nigeria again met with some key figures within the political party, within the APC. Today, again, he's going to meet with them. And what are the issues at stake? The issues at stake, as we have seen from the reports, is that, in fact, it's not everybody that wants to follow the president's insistence on the idea of a consensus. And yesterday, we pointed out to Governor Bello that there are persons, apart from the 7 chairmanship aspirants, who say, no, they don't agree, and they would like to run. Let's go to the field and test it. And he said, yes, well, it's democracy and all that, but this is what the president wants. Okay, let's unpack the issues one after the other. The president's meeting, yesterday and today is to forge a consensus. But one, there are people within the party who say, no, this consensus is not possible. The party, according to the statement reaffirmed by Garuba Shehu, has already microzoned the positions. And he says the president is in accord with the microzoning of the positions. All he's interested in is unity. But what we have had is that with regard to the position of the chairman, or even the deputy chairman, some of the aspirants are saying, no, they are not going to step down. Why don't they want to step down? They say they've spent a lot of money. One guy called Moni Edafe, one Urobo man, who claims that he's a northerner, in politics. Even if you come from Southern Kaduna, you can claim you are from Ilara Mokin. That's how politicians behave. The guy is saying, look, it's not enough to say you are returning my 20 million nomination form fee. I've spent more than 300 million in this particular case. Moni Edafe, he says he wants to be deputy national chairman. Okay? So the president cannot just come and say, we'll give you your nomination form fee, and then you can go to hell. And there are, out of the 7 chairmanship aspirants, some of them who are saying, no, we don't agree with the imposition of Abdullahi Adamu. Garuba Shehu, in his own statement, says, no, the president is not imposing anybody. The president just wants order and unity within the party. So what is clear is that is it about 48 hours now to the convention, that there is very serious division.
24.
Where? 24 hours. Today is Friday.
Yeah.
That there is very clear division within the party. When the president calls a meeting again of the major stakeholders today, will he be able to impose his will? Garuba Shehu says the president does not want to impose his will. But apparently it looks like the president has his own preferences. 2, another member of the party says, part of the problem that the APC has is that all the chosen consensus candidates from the north, that they are all Muslims. The question has been raised in the last 24 hours. That why should all of them from the north be Muslims? There are Christians in the north. That's part of the narrative. 3, they say they will abide by the Electoral Act. The caretaker committee has made that clear. Okay, which means that persons who are going to run, who are political appointees, will not be allowed to be delegates at the convention on Saturday. That much is clear. And, that controversy has been on the ground. And then in line with Section 84 subsection 9, not 12 now. If there is an agreement to consensus, all the other candidates who agree to that consensus must put it in writing and sign. Is everybody going to sign?
No.
That is where the APC has found itself now. Now, you showed the management showed the footage of what's his name now? Kayode Fayemi, the governor of Ekiti State. And we reported in the introduction that Kayode Fayemi was saying he doesn't like, he's opposed to the idea of consensus, all right? But in the last 24 hours, Kayode Fayemi has disowned that video. So you see that the politics is very serious. This is something that Arise News reported from an event where CDD, which he used to lead, as the country director, some of the things he said. Now he said he didn't say so. Yinka Oyebode, his chief press secretary, has issued a statement to say that is not what he said. What he said is that the president of Nigeria believes in the unity of the party. Hey, but we are not deaf here. We listened to that tape.
Interesting.
So within 24 hours, he too has changed his position. The more difficult problem that I think the All Progressives Congress has is that even the National Assembly members, speaking through Femi Gbajabiamila, the Speaker of the House of Reps, has said that, look, the way the APC is going, it's like they are treating the National Assembly members as if they don't matter. All the decisions about consensus have been taken, and that, he in his view thinks that the National Assembly has not been carried along. So how do you go to a convention, you are agreeing on consensus, you are saying that this is what the party leader wants, and then the National Assembly comes forward and says, who is taking these decisions? We are major stakeholders in this matter. Why are we not a party to the table when critical decisions are taken? Okay, so these are some of the booby traps ahead of the APC convention tomorrow, as I have seen them. A lot can happen, Tundu, as you said, in 24 hours in politics. Maybe the president is calling 23 governors to a meeting today. Maybe he'll be able to say, well, as a leader of the party, this is what I want. And all of them, like weather-beaten chickens, will just say, oh, yes, sir, yes, sir. And, the process will go on. But the thing to think about is what happens thereafter. If you beat people into line, and you say, only Muslims from the northern part of the party can hold critical positions, and they will say, yes, sir. These are the consensus candidates, and they say, yes, sir. Even Akeredolu, who is governor of the Southern Governors Forum, he is saying that they are imposing people on him in the Southwest. That the Southwest governors don't want certain persons. If you impose on them, okay, they will say, yes, sir. So the critical thing is what happens the morning after. And I think that the APC, I keep saying it, should learn its lessons from the example of what happened to the People's Democratic Party in 2014, 2015. And let no dunderhead say that I'm making partisan comments. I'm not making partisan comments. I'm speaking as a public affairs analyst and looking at the issues.
So, about last week, I posited that the APC party convention will be a third world war. I'll take it that I was right. I hate to have a victory lap, but the APC's disunity has given me that victory lap today. I also posited that it's going to be a fight to finish among different camps. But I hate to say it too, I am correct again today. We all saw this coming. And when people were saying the problem with the APC is an implosion, I said no. It's a self-immolation. They are burning themselves from within because some people feel they are better in the party than others. And we forget a lot, and the APC forgets a lot, that this is not Stalin Russia. This is a democracy. And you must have internal democracy in political parties. Two things I'll take away. Number one, this unity list that is about to come out today will become a disunity list for the APC. And this is objective as we can get. I saw Governor Dapo Abiodun on Arise News Night yesterday. the body language and all he said, not in support of this consensus. Most of the governors are not in support of this imposition. They might come back and try to look good and say, oh, everything is okay, but they are not in support of it because they feel they are all stakeholders in the party. And you want to impose on them? And that's why I say it's going to be a fight to finish. And you see the different splinter groups that form the APC, the likes of the CPC, they are fighting for the soul of the party. You heard in that report, and CPC is trying to put Tokunbo Afikuyomi in the Southwest. The CPC is not traditionally a Southwest party. There's going to be a backlash. See what is happening with the case of Yola Mishore. So there are booby traps everywhere. There are little fires everywhere. There are Molotov cocktails being thrown everywhere. And I'll tell you what, the earthquake has started. The earthquake in the APC started when the president thought he could whip everybody in line with that letter. And the aftershocks will linger on and on. Like they say, 24 hours is a long time in politics. Hopefully they can salvage things in 24 hours. And I think the first step will be to remove every arrangement possible and let the will of the people prevail in this convention. Because if it doesn't prevail, or if they feel they are stifled in any way, you're going to have a lot of drama and surprises. It's going to be a long day of plenty of surprises in the APC tomorrow at the convention. And the APC, they are setting themselves alight by themselves. And you wonder, what is democracy truly supposed to be about? I hope the APC is taking notes as all of this continues. That's all on News Headline. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll have Rhodes Sudiri, Michael Wilson, Adesso Omoro, and Aaron Akeja to give us updates on Africa, global business, COVID-19, and sporting activities across the globe. Stay with us.
Welcome back to the Morning Show here on Arise News. Our dependable Rotus Adiri is here to give us an African business update. Good morning, Rotus.
Good morning, Rufai. Good morning, Doctor. Yeah, capital importation data was released by the Bureau of Statistics for Nigeria for the fourth quarter of 2021. So the final quarter, I think we came in at about $2.1 billion is what came in, but a 26% increase from the third quarter of 2021. I think that was about 1.7 billion. Overall, though, capital importation for 2021 fell by about 30% year on year. 2020, we brought in 9.6 billion, 2021, 6.7. So you're looking at what came in by type. Second place, portfolio investments, $642 million is what came in. That's just the number at the center of the screen. Third place was foreign direct investment, which is what we need more than anything else. Again, this is for the fourth quarter, 358 million. If we move on from that, importation by other investments, it came in at 1.1 billion. That was the largest allocation. And that, the way it's disaggregated at the top right of the screen, it was all loans. It was loans that made up the bulk of other investments that came into Nigeria. When we look at what's next, let's take a look at the next slide. Okay, by country, the top destination, or rather top source, was Mauritius, $611 million, top left. United States, top right, $321 million. South Africa, third place, $285. Netherlands and Singapore, $228, $223, as far as the top 5 destinations. We move on from that. States, no surprise, out of $2.1 billion that came in, Lagos State took 1.9 billion. So that's about 90% of that. 1.9 billion top left. The FCT, it was next, 107. I mean, look at the gap, $170 million versus 1.9 billion. Osun State, 29. Oyo, 2 million. River States, 1 million. You guys you folks should ask the governors what's going on. Your sectors. Bottom right, tanning brought in $645 million. That's the process of turning skins into leather. You've got trade in second place there at the bottom left of your screen, $311 million that came in. We move on from that to the banks. Which banks brought in this, or rather, what banks received the most capital importation in the fourth quarter? EcoBank at the top of your screen, $708 million. Stanbic IBTC at the bottom there, $453 in second place. We move on, more banks. There's another two of them. Citibank, $234 million in third place, and then Zenith Bank, fourth place, $221. And then I think what's next after? Oh, that's pretty much it. So that's essentially the story. We're not getting enough foreign direct investment. Lagos State still eats up the bulk of what comes in, and year on year, 2021 versus 2020, total capital importation is down by 30%. Quickly move on to Ghana. I mentioned yesterday that Ken Ofori-Atta, the Minister of Finance, would be giving a speech as to exactly what cost-cutting measures Ghana would be taking, and here he is. Here's what he's had to say.
Discretionary spending is to be further cut 10%. The Ministry of Finance is currently meeting with MDAs to review their spending plans for the rest of the 3 quarters to achieve the discretionary expenditure cuts. 2, these times call for very efficient use of energy resources. In line with this, there will be a 50% cut in fuel coupon allocations for all political appointees and heads of government institutions, including SOEs, effective 1st February 2022. With immediate effect, government has imposed a complete moratorium on the purchase of imported vehicles for the rest of the year. This will affect all new orders, especially four-wheel drives. We will ensure that the overall effect is to reduce total vehicle purchases by the public sector by at least 50% for the period. Again, with immediate effect, government has imposed a moratorium on all foreign travels except pre-approved critical statutory travels. 5, government will conclude on ongoing measures to eliminate ghost workers from the government payroll by end December 2022. Government will conclude the renegotiations of the energy sector IPP's capacity charges by end of quarter 3 2022 to further reduce excess capacity payments by 20% to generate a total savings of 1.5 billion Ghana cedis. We will impose a moratorium on establishment of new public sector institutions by end of April 2022, prioritize ongoing public projects over new projects. This is to enhance the efficient use of limited public funds over the period by finishing ongoing or stalled but approved projects. Reduce expenditure on all meetings and conferences by 50% effective immediately. Pursue a comprehensive reprofiling strategies to reduce the interest expense burden on the fiscal, and liaise with organized labor and employers association to implement with immediate effect the measures captured in the Kwao Declaration of the 2022 National Labor Conference, including reforms towards addressing salary inequities, inequalities, example Article 71, office holders. The weak link between pay to productivity and sustainability of the payroll.
So Ghana has ghost workers, they need to cut down on travel, they need to cut down on salaries, they need to cut all the issues that plague a number of African nations.
Nigeria.
Still very. Finally, South Africa, as the economists that were polled got it right, they did hike their benchmark interest rate to 4.25%. And, you know, again, the central bank, the governor of the Reserve Bank of South Africa said that, look, it was inflation that was their main concern. So Egypt, Ghana, South Africa, all these number of other countries, inflation is still the primary reason why they're hiking their rates, and that's our update.
And it has to be said, it was just, just to reinforce what we said yesterday. When you look at all those countries that have had to hike rates and have, quick reactions to inflationary pressures, it is because when you look at their base inflation rate, it was quite low, it was single-digit inflation. So they need to react quickly to keep the equilibrium. But when you check here in our economy, we've had double-digit inflation for the longest time. I mean, after the 2015 elections, we've had inflation go up to 18%.
The border closure.
And the border closure also spiked it up, to about 17%. Now we're benchmarking at about 15%. And those days of single-digit inflation rates, the 9% target that the CBN normally gives, those days are long gone. So let's see how we can gradually trickle that down. But when I saw those numbers, it's scary. that those are the kind of numbers, very mega and paltry numbers.
Yeah,
the capital importation.
Yeah.
I mean, we're just talking about that. I said, that's something about one district will do in New York. Yeah. So we need to try as much as possible to make it better by also adding value to the product. We're talking about tanning. And I was positing, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I was positing the fact that it'll probably be one of these multinational, fashion houses that are pumping money, getting the so-called, the Moroccan leather they don't talk is mostly from Kano.
Yeah.
So pumping money in there, getting some products out and shipping it abroad. And guess what?
They're making
$10,000
bags
per one bag and all of that. It's just like the cocoa story.
And chocolates.
When they took a chocolate bar to a farmer in Abidjan and he's like, what is this? And they said, that's from your cocoa. And he's like, I've not seen this.
Right.
So
it's like the oil story.
Yeah, like the oil story.
Right,
so we need to try as much as possible to add value. I'm excited about what Ken Ofori has done. Because you see,
in Ghana.
In Ghana. Because the problem in Ghana is fiscal discipline. Charlie, to a large extent.
You say Charlie?
Sorry. Charlie, to a large extent, the problem is fiscal discipline. And Ken Ofori has stamped his feet on the ground as regards that. Charlie, a lot of these lawmakers in Ghana just,
I still insist that, look, even before COVID, even before this global supply chain crisis and all of that, many economies were under pressure, more of them in the developing countries. So I don't think the fact that Nigeria was already having a high inflation rate will be an excuse for Nigeria to adopt an accommodative or dovish stance. What came out of that Monetary Policy Committee meeting? We didn't see concrete ideas in terms of what Nigeria even wants to do with the extant situation against the run of play within the international market. Although, in fairness to the CBN governor, he talked about the need to address electricity issues, the need to address fuel supply issues. But these are not short-term things that the Nigerian government can immediately deal with. And I made the point, quoting Bismarck Remani, that if we're not careful, our failure to address the key issues within the Nigerian economy will end up putting us in a worse situation. He talked about devaluation. Some other economists talked about the possibility of a recession. And I asked you the question yesterday, and I don't have an answer to it yet. You are the expert. That, look, is Nigeria towing the same line? Because this accommodative stance that Nigeria assumes all the time, it looks like a default position. When there is nothing else to do, we just say, okay, we'll retain CRR, liquidity ratio, and MPR, and we want to watch. This is the language they use all the time, what the situation will be. That's that. We don't have enough time. Capital importation. So are you surprised that capital importation, went down drastically between 2020 and 2021? You should not be surprised. Capital importation, who wants to bring goods to Nigeria? When there was COVID, there was a supply chain crisis in the country. Even if, that was addressed and the world is opening up, what is the situation today? Nigeria has a very terrible forest crisis. Even the CBN governor made that very clear, that we have a forest crisis. There are, people disinvesting from Nigeria. Capital importation. Is it not about the CCI? How much forex comes into the country? How much goods comes into the country? And you talked about loans. Right. That the main thing that is coming into the country is Nigeria taking loans. So all of that, about this capital importation story, is about the dysfunctionality of the Nigerian economy. I'll be more interested in what do we do to reverse it? Because some other countries in the world are, deploying strategies to address the situation. But you avoid theft. Shell says we're pulling out of the Bonny terminal. Other investors are saying there are security problems in Nigeria. We don't want to go there. Okay, we've not been able to expand the economy the way we should. We can't even have fuel. We can't even have gas. And Nigeria is said to have over 200 trillion cubic feet of gas. So the thing to focus on, in my view, is how the Nigerian economy has become so dysfunctional and what is likely to be the long-term effect beyond some of these rhetorical questions that are raised by the relevant authorities. That's the way I see it.
All
Well, we're out of time. Thank you, Reuters.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Moving on now to more business update. Michael Wilson joins us from London. Good morning, Mr. Wilson.
Payroll by end December 2022. Government will conclude the renegotiations of the energy.
Sorry, I've heard something else then. Okay, so Asian markets are actually fairly mixed. China down a very little bit. Shares of Hong Kong listed Russian aluminium maker Rusal up a lot and then down also. Down basically because people were actually looking to see what the Australian ban on that company actually means, and vice versa. JD Logistics shares dived more than 12% in Hong Kong. We've been talking about Hong Kong and maybe the fact that there will be China shares listed in Hong Kong, and maybe China will be slightly deregulating some of those. In other words, not putting regulations as hard as they possibly might. On Wall Street, for example, it has to be said that people have actually been buying tech stocks. I'll come on to that later, basically because they feel as though the economies are actually getting better. I mean, seriously, this is what they're actually thinking on Wall Street. China electric vehicles, there may be a bit of a shakeout there. The smaller companies may feel as though supply chains are going to hit them, increased supply costs and all the rest of it. It's likely that the big ones like Tesla will probably survive, but it's looking as though EV vehicles may see some kind of shakeout, at least the smaller manufacturers. That's the news we're getting this morning from China. Now, we were talking yesterday about Russia maybe getting payment in rubles for its energy. Now it's considering Bitcoin as a possible supplier of payment as well, and we'll see about that. It may well be that that's what they're turning to, away from fiat currencies in various things, but they're open to apparently negotiations on what currency their energy costs pay for. Remember, of course, that the majority of payments are forbidden under the present sanctions which are imposed upon Russia, including the US Treasury, which has now forbidden companies to trade in gold because they feel as though that will increase the value of the ruble, and so that's an increasing sanction there. Again, the gold markets have yet really to react strongly to that. As far as the United States is concerned, then stock futures a little changed really this morning. Move comes after once again a fairly fraught today, a fairly torrid day up, but basically the S&P 500 and Nasdaq are up 1.3 and 2.1% respectively on the week. The Dow is the only smaller one. As I was saying, semiconductor stocks also rose. When semiconductor stocks rise, that tends to point towards people being pretty chip stocks, people looking at them and thinking, oh, it's maybe economies are beginning to improve. EU leaders, they're meeting yesterday and today. They've sent a strong message to China saying use your leverage, or your leverage, if you pronounce it like that, to get some kind of response to some kind of peace talks between Ukraine and President Putin's Russia. Chinese authorities, as you know, have refused to say a great deal about this, and they're still not looking at it as an invasion. But there we are. That's the message from the EU to China. Use your power to leverage some kind of meeting between the two powers that stand at the moment at war with each other. The EU is also going to get more LNG. This was one of these things I was mentioning yesterday from this meeting. It plans to boost supplies of LNG by the end of 2022. We're looking at 15 billion cubic meters. Now, again, what does that mean? Well, I'm not exactly sure how much that is, but I can tell you that Russia sort of at the moment, or before all this, was giving 50 billion cubic meters. So it's a start. President Macron, coming up for election later this year, is taking a real risk with the economy. He's raising the retirement age, or he wants to, from 62 to 65, and that won't be very popular within France, which prides itself on a relatively early retirement age. Early retirement age, actually, almost the most early one as far as the EU is concerned. Certainly pretty early amongst industrialised nations. The UK. Now, here's an interesting one. The Prime Minister is saying, we're telling you about about the spring statement, which we saw on Wednesday, and the fallout from that yesterday. And I thought, to be honest, watching the Chancellor of the Exchequer, Rishi Sunak, doing his interviews around and about, he was looking pretty testy when people were actually saying, well, what's it actually achieved? Have you actually given anything away? And the Prime Minister is actually saying that government should do more, which is interesting, because normally what happens after a mini budget like this is that you get one voice from the Chancellor and the Prime Minister, for the moment, at least for that bit. But clearly you're now saying that he thinks that the Chancellor didn't do enough to push the largesse around, and is fairly clearly looking forward to banking what's been achieved at the moment and taking that into 2024, which is not going down well here at all. Something also not going down well here, so of course there's mass sackings at P&O, and here you have the chief executive actually holding his hands up and saying, I completely held my hands up, and we chose not to consult. He's actually said that to a committee of MPs. The reason he's saying is that the unions wouldn't have accepted it in the first place, and we're sort of getting confirmation that the kind of money that people will be earning working for P&O will be about £3.50 an hour. That's well below the minimum wage, but P&O can get away with it, at least the owners can, because these ships sail in international waters. And finally, as to commodities, and oil sliding very slightly overnight, but still volatile to any kind of political or geopolitical moves as far as the war between Russia and Ukraine is concerned. That's your global view as we head into the weekend. I suspect most people battening down the hatches and playing it safe.
Well, thank you, Mr. Wilson. What is your take on President Macron's risky but necessary, as he's described it, on those plans? Because, he's raised it before. We all saw the huge protests, and he's brought it back again. And he's saying he doesn't want to raise taxes, so people have to work longer. There are exemptions for people born after 1969, and for those who have really physically tasking jobs, they get to still retire at 62 under that plan. But what's your take on that?
Well, with all due respect to our French neighbours, if you've ever tried to get anybody to work over the weekend or through lunchtime, forget it. They are very, very precious about their spare time, and therefore they're precious about their retirement age. It's a big risk. You're quite right. He did try to do it. Then the pandemic got in the way. I think it'll be a major, major reform. The curse of all developing and developed countries is demographics. There are too many old people who need to be supported by the government because they're not being supported by their families like they used to be many, many years ago. That's the fact of it, and he's got to do this. Good luck to that. It's going to be very, very difficult indeed to do in France.
Three things, Michael. The first has to do with Russia. Russia, only yesterday that we were discussing the subject, says unfriendly nations will now have to pay for oil and gas imports from Russia in ruble. And the whole plan is to shore up the Russian ruble, which has collapsed by about 20%. Now, the same Russia is saying, well, you can even pay in Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies. Is this a sign of desperation? And how about this as a strategy? Given the fact that there are risks involved with the use of cryptocurrency, and China, a major partner to Russia, has even since longer banned Bitcoin or cryptocurrency. And second, Europe yesterday, there was this Digital Markets Act, under which the big techs, Google, Apple, are supposed to open up to other businesses. An antitrust, competition kind of regulation, although it will still have to go through the European Parliament. All the ministers of the European Union will still have to endorse it. But the whole idea is to address this idea about the antitrust practices of big tech. Do you think that this will sail through? And do you think that the big techs are sincere? And then finally, your comment on U.S. job growth as reported, higher than expected. And what is the significance of that? Wages are going up, jobs are going up, even if not at the same level as the pre-pandemic era.
Okay. Right, Russia. First of all, I have no idea. I mean, as I said yesterday, I'm sceptical about, as many commodity brokers are, about paying in rubles, and then along comes Bitcoin as well. It does seem as though what Russia is seeing is it needs payments for its energy exports, and it's using whatever mechanisms it can, which are somehow outside the sanctions, as you'd expect it to do. We even heard yesterday, did we not? And at least one of the export chiefs in India saying that there was going to be some mechanism between the ruble and the rupee to get payments there. Now that's certainly not, that wasn't underlined by the finance ministry in India nor by the government. So I think it was probably just a punt. But nevertheless, you can see which way this is going. That what Russia is trying to do is to evade the sanctions by getting payment in other sorts of currencies. Will it work or will it not work? I don't know. I share your views about Bitcoin. I think it's fairly risky. As far as China is concerned, I mean, yeah, good luck to them. I think they have seen the worries about Bitcoin, and quite rightly too. As far as big tech's concerned, yes, I think certainly there will be a clampdown, whether it'll actually work or not, and whether it'll get through the EU, because there are always two sides to a coin, aren't there? There's always the company themselves, and then there's the jobs that it provides. Now, nobody likes a monopoly. I still think, for what it's worth, that big tech will face its Standard Oil moments, particularly in the United States, which, as you know, you remember all those years ago, that company, Standard Oil, grew so big that it was broken up because it was seen to be a monopoly. I feel the same will happen for the big tech companies as well. I think that's what they're facing. Whatever the EU actually decrees happens, of course, is a different matter. They'll fight it very hard indeed.
Okay.
All right, thank you so much, Michael. Really appreciate you for your time. For updates on COVID-19 pandemic, Adesso and Moro, Adesso, great to have you.
Good to be here, Rufai. Good morning, and thank you. Good morning, Tundu, and good morning, Dr. Abati.
Morning.
Morning.
Well, hi. Well, thank God it's Friday. And we now know that there were about 12 million new weekly coronavirus cases globally, and that's about 7% increase from the previous week. However, COVID-19 related deaths continue to decline globally for that same period. There were 33,000 deaths in the last 7 days, and that's a 23% decline, according to the World Health Organization. You should have the global data as provided by the Johns Hopkins University tally on your screen at the moment. There are about 6.1 million deaths globally so far, and over 477 million infections. Thankfully, there have been 10.8 billion vaccine doses administered. However, vaccine inequity remains, and I will tell you a bit more about that in a moment. While the Western Pacific region of the WHO remains the only region still seeing those very large numbers of coronavirus cases in the last 7 days. Here in Nigeria, the latest data released by the federal health authorities shows that 54 new infections were officially confirmed with no COVID-19 related deaths. A reminder that these were the figures released on Wednesday. So we should be getting new figures anytime today, as Nigeria moved from daily reporting of the coronavirus pandemic toll to 3 times in a week: Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays. Nigeria so far has recorded a little over 255,000 infections and unfortunately lost 3,142 of its citizens to the disease. The country has also fully vaccinated 9.9% of its targeted eligible population. That's because it's not looking to vaccinate the entire population at the moment. Well, to Zimbabwe, I can tell you that, beg your pardon, Zimbabwe has now launched a new COVID-19 vaccination campaign, which includes vaccinating children aged 12 and above, as it battles vaccine hesitancy. This week, we saw schools in the country become vaccination zones, with kids, teens lining up to get their jabs. And this move is backed by many parents in Zimbabwe who say the school calendar has been heavily disrupted by the virus. President Emerson hopes that he can vaccinate 70% of his population by the end of July this year. It's a very arduous task. And in a sign that vaccine inequity persists in the global response to the pandemic, as I mentioned earlier, well, Novavax has sent tens of millions of its new coronavirus vaccine to wealthy nations, but none has been received by the UN-backed COVAX Alliance or Initiative for Poorer Countries. Now, the first shipment of its vaccines were actually expected this month in those poorer countries, but now COVAX says it won't be receiving those deliveries until maybe April or May. Meanwhile, EU countries, Australia, the Netherlands have received millions of these doses. Now, the Novavax vaccine is believed to be highly suitable for poorer countries because it requires refrigeration storage and not the very, very cold ones we see with other vaccines. And finally, this morning, the European Medicine Agency said in a statement that it was advising the use of the new drug by AstraZeneca. It is sold as the Evershield in people aged 12 and over because those are people who are exposed to COVID-19, immunocompromised people. And this is to prevent future infections in them. Well, it is now up to the EU executive arm, the European Commission, to officially authorize this drug. I can tell you it's been authorized in the US last year, December, and just last week in Britain, it was also authorized. So back to you guys.
Okay, the key thing about Evershield, developed by the AstraZeneca, is that out of all the antibody, drugs that have been developed before now, it has a longer-term prevention range of about 6 months compared to Paxlovid or compared to Molnupiravir that was developed by Merck. Okay, so the US FDA approved of it last December. Then the UK did so last week. What is special about Evershield is simply that, the antibody attacks the spike protein and it prevents it from entering the cells. And the whole objective is to prevent, people getting sick with the coronavirus. So it's a preventive kind of drug. And I have no doubts that perhaps, with the US FDA and with the UK adopting it, and with the recommendation of the European Medicines Agency, the EMA, that it will have an easy endorsement by the European Commission, which is the final authority to determine whether it should be applied in the European Union. And it's basically reserved for persons 12 years and above who are cancer patients or immunodepressed patients who are suffering with things like, rheumatoid arthritis, or, persons within that category generally. As for Zimbabwe, Zimbabwe has a population of 15 million. Now, Zimbabwe shut down its schools for about 2 years. And about last month, Zimbabwe had been trying to reopen. But it has also discovered that despite the fact that about 23% of that 15 million had received at least 2 doses, one of the best records in Africa, along with Seychelles and Mauritius, 2 other countries that have gone ahead of other African countries, that it needs to do more with regard to vaccine hesitancy and vaccine complacency. And President Emerson Mnangagwa is saying that, Zimbabwe has enough vaccines, to be able to address it. So he's launching this mass vaccination campaign and starting with schools. And I think that that's a good strategy. On this program, before now, I'd recommended that because as a young child, a primary school student, in the same Nigeria in those days, public health officials used to come to primary schools, secondary schools. They will ask us to line up at assembly in the morning, and they will take attendance at the assembly. Yeah. And they used to have these very big gadgets. It wasn't needles or the kind of specialized needles that were used now. These were machines. By the time they give it the injection, it will leave a mark. I'm sure many persons of my generation, if you check their arms, you will find that eternal mark of having been vaccinated as primary school pupils. But Nigeria, along with Ethiopia, Congo, Kenya, also have mass vaccination campaigns. I think the question we should ask is, okay, what are these other countries also doing along the same way with Zimbabwe? Because Africa, is still far behind in terms of vaccination. Global average is 57%. The average in Africa is just about 14%. And the calculation by the Africa CDC, Centers for Disease Control, is that Africa will have to, vaccinate people up to about 19 times to be able to even get close to the global average. As for rich countries not sending Novavax, I think that's the company you were talking about, a small company, producing vaccines in Maryland, United States, but the vaccine is considered to be effective all the same. But the factories in Czechoslovakia and some other parts of Europe that the Gavi Alliance had asked to supply, vaccines worth over $318 million worth of vaccines to developing countries, has not been able to meet the target. But the major challenge that we face is that it looks like the world has moved on beyond their vaccination. Companies are opening up. People are talking about the war in Ukraine, and there are challenges. Even the developing countries, they have logistical challenges, including many countries in Africa. So it's a multidimensional challenge that we'll face in this regard beyond Novavax failing to meet its obligations.
You cannot be more
please
correct.
go.
Right. I find it really interesting with regards to the Zimbabwe story that they've just leapt right into vaccinating school children. You'll recall, Adeswa, when vaccines for children, 19 years to 12 to 19 years old, was initially discussed. It was first to be administered to those who might have underlying health issues. And then it was, gradually introduced to the rest of the population. And now you even have countries in Europe vaccinating under 5s. So I think that's really progressive and forward-thinking of the government in Zimbabwe. And I have to stress that there were initial reports of side effects like myocarditis in some children, but that's extremely rare. The science still suggests that it is beneficial to children to be vaccinated for COVID-19.
Indeed.
Well, thank you, Adis. So on that note, we have to leave it. Have a great weekend.